Most of the time, you don't want to repeat words in a document, so Word tries to help you out by marking those as errors. There are times, though, when you really do need to repeat words. In this video, I show you how to deal with such instances. Word has a spelling and grammar checker that tries to helpfully point out potential errors in your documents. These potential errors are marked with all sorts of underlines depending on the type of error. One of the common errors that Word tries to helpfully mark is when you type the same word twice in a row. When you type the repeated word, the second instance is given a red squiggly underline. There are times, though, when you really need to have two repeated words. For instance, you might be typing transcripts and somebody repeats a word 2 or more times. Or you could be typing the name of various cities that have repeated words. Consider Walla Walla, Washington, or the infamous Sing Sing prison in New York. And then there is, of course, Paw Paw, the name of towns in Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, Michigan, and West Virginia, not to mention a creek, a river, and a plethora of lakes, schools, and businesses. So there really are instances where it is valid to repeat 2 words, and having Word mark those instances as incorrect can be distracting. There are several ways that you can handle these instances, as you'll discover. Before jumping into the fixes that you can use, though, you need to understand that Word does allow some double words, but not all. For instance, if I type Walla Walla, Washington, you can see that Word does not mark it as a duplicate. But if I go ahead and I type Sing Sing, as in the prison, then you can see that it does put the red squiggly underline under the second instance of the word sing. In older versions of Word, though, it used to mark Walla Walla, but apparently does not anymore. With that, let's jump into the various ways that you can deal with correctly repeated words in your documents. One approach is to accept each of the instances of duplicated words. This just means that you need to right-click on the second word that has the red underline, and then you can choose Ignore Once to ignore that instance of a marked word. Of course, you'll need to do this for every single time that the repeated word is marked in the document. If you only have an instance or 2 of a repeat, this might work out fine. However, if you have dozens or scores of instances, you could get tired of this approach quite quickly. Another way to solve the problem is to mark the text so that there is no grammar or spell checking done on it. When I was a kid, we used to watch lots of cartoons. One of them featured characters named Yogi and Boo Boo, both bears living in Jellystone Park. If I wanted to write about Boo Boo, then Word helpfully marks every second instance of Boo as a repeated word. To get around this, I'll just select an instance of the name and make sure I don't select any trailing spaces. Then I display the Review tab of the ribbon, click the Language tool, and then choose Set Proofing Language. That displays the language dialog box. This is where you would normally indicate the language of whatever text you have selected. In this case, though, I'm going to check the Do Not Check Spelling or Grammar option right down here. And then I'm going to click on OK. This ensures that Word will ignore the text. Note that the red squiggly underline no longer appears in the selected text that I have up here, but it does appear in other instances of Boo Boo within this document. Now I can press Ctrl-C to copy that selected text, and I can paste it wherever I want within the document. All I would have to do is go and select the other instances of Boo Boo and press Ctrl-V, and now you can see that it's not underlined in this instance. And all I would have to do is go through the document and do it in all the rest of the places. If I want to use this no checking version of the name a lot, I can also create a building block for the phrase. With that phrase still selected up here, the one that has the language turned off on it, I'm going to go ahead and select it, again without that trailing space, and then I'm going to press Alt plus F3. That pulls up the Create New Building Block dialog box. If I wanted to, I could change the short name for the building block, but I don't have to. In this case, I'm going to just go ahead and click OK to create the actual building block. At this point, anytime I start to type the word boo-boo, I'm going to get rid of this one right down here. All I would have to do is start to type B-O-O-B, and see it gives me the option to insert that building block. I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and then my space, and you can see that my building block is in there, and that second instance of boo does not have a red underline underneath it. The difference is that the phrase, as completed by Word, has the spelling and grammar checking turned off, so I don't see the incorrect spelling error noted. A third approach works well if you are doing transcriptions and need to include repeated words within that transcription. When people speak, they often repeat words, and the transcription of that speech may need to include those repetitious words. For instance, watch what happens when I type this phrase that includes repeated words. This could very well be how the words were spoken, and Word underlines the second instance of went as a repeated word. In this instance, all you need to do is add some sort of a punctuation between the words. For instance, if I go ahead and put a comma in here, notice that Word gets rid of that red squiggly underline. The punctuation breaks up the repetition and Word no longer marks it. Now you should obviously choose the punctuation mark that is appropriate for what you are hearing, and just about any punctuation mark will do just fine. A final approach you could use is to just configure Word so it doesn't check if there are any repeated words. This is quite easy to do. All you have to do is go over to the File tab of the ribbon, click on Options. That brings up the Word Options dialog box. At the left side of the screen, we're going to click on Proofing, and then I'm just going to clear this option right down here, Flag Repeated Words. When I turn that off and go ahead and click on OK, then in my document, notice that the red squiggly underline no longer appears underneath the second instance of a repeated word. Now, obviously, this doesn't get rid of the potential problem, but it does mean that Word no longer pays attention to the problem, and it doesn't try to bring it to your attention. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please click like, then the subscribe button, and finally the bell icon. That way you'll be informed whenever I add a new video to the Word Tips channel. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me today.